I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason if they want to go.
How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the podcast. I hope everybody had a good Christmas, a happy holidays, however you celebrate, good Thanksgiving, and if you're in the continent of North America, I hope you stayed warm during this last cool snap. I'm here in North Alabama. I know it got down to like 0 degrees, and stuff was popping and busting and freezing everywhere. Just a quick reminder before we get to our guest, please check out the newly renovated BobbyDizzle.com. I've got all the episodes there, all the ways to like, listen, and subscribe and watch. I got iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, a bunch of other stuff. Just click on it and check it out. Today's guest is Glen Jackson of Cryptid researcher fame. He's an American hero, former first responder, and just a really good guy. You're really going to like this episode. He's since become a friend of the show, so please welcome Glen Jackson to the Bobby Dizzle podcast. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and please share, folks. Please share. Thank you. 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome back to the Bobby Dizzle podcast. Tonight we got Wild Trees, of course, your friendly neighborhood water bear wrangler. And on the ones and twos, we've got Glen Jackson, Virginia native, Tennessee fan, which is, we won't count that against him. Are you still in Knoxville?
No, I'm actually back in the ATL.
Okay, well, put on your body armor. He is a military history buff, first responder, a real American hero, and cryptid researcher, and various other paranormal researcher. Glen, tell us about your first start interested in the large hairy creatures. I'm reading over your bio here and just touching the fine points, and I'll let you elaborate on the rest.
Yeah, okay. Well, the large hairy cryptid known as the Mount Vernon monster.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, growing up in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington D.C. in the I'm going to show my age here. In the 80s, there was a bipedal creature that was lovingly referred to as the Mount Vernon monster. It resembled a Sasquatch. It walked and talked, but it acted like a Sasquatch. But it was only around the area for probably about a year, give or take. So that led people to thinking, this is right by a military base. Could this have something to do with it? So I don't know. As kids, we were always in the woods trying to figure it out. And one night we had a real up close and personal experience.
So you actually had experience with it?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't. What was that like? Is it like a typical Bigfoot experience or?
Well, to a child that's preteen, teenager, yeah, it was it was pretty intense. We had managed to get onto a certain golf course that's located in the Mount Vernon area. Only one of them, and we had thought we're not going to go through the woods because, well, we don't want anything to get us. So we were out on the greens. I think it's the fairway. I don't know where there's not sand and there's not woods. We were in that part of the golf course. And we came up on this little rise and we thought, there's some guy down there by the pond. And so, we were young and probably not very quiet, but we were trying to be quiet. And this thing, the best I could describe it was sitting, it wasn't sitting, it was kind of crouched like an Indian would. And I thought, now this could just be imagination or my memories from way back being fogged, but I thought it was eating frogs. Because that was the first thing I remember saying. I'm like, heck. And when it stood up, it was very tall. And we were far enough away to where we didn't get a great look at it at that time, but we knew it didn't fit in there. And of course, obviously, we weren't supposed to be there either. So we immediately decided to turn and de-ass the area. And this thing ran to the wood line and it paralleled us. Like I said, we were on the green the whole way. Managed to get back through the fence into a fire road, and it sounded like a truck going through the woods. And it was loud. It didn't growl, didn't bark or hiss or anything. But what it did do, when we get to the fire road, we felt safe. Streetlight, fire road, we're safe. We're still somewhat in the city here, even though at that time it wasn't as grown up as it is now. There was at the end of the fire road an old mansion, and it had I don't know if you've ever seen the colonial homes had brick fences. that were probably, I don't know, 6-ish foot high, maybe. But in order to keep people out, kids, they had put a chain link fence with barbed wire across the top. This thing grabbed the top of the barbed wire, flipped itself over, ran across the forest road, and did the exact same thing and landed in like a little swampy area where the creek had backed up. Well, it's always backed up right there, and crouched, turned, and stared at us. And that's when we got the best view of this creature. The things that I remember most vividly was that its eyes were silver like reflectors and it had the prettiest teeth. And I know that sounds stupid, but to a kid, that was what I remembered. And it kind of let out a growl. And the three of us that were together tried to get out of there, except for one of my friends was froze in terror. And I kept running into him trying to get out of the way with the old joke, as long as you're the fastest one, it's not going to get you. And that's the last time that I saw the creature. Now, as you mentioned, I'm in public safety. I grew up around the firehouse and plenty of police officers, cops, all that in my background. There were stories. There was a police officer that was in the Mount Vernon area that had encountered a creature in the dumpster behind the yacht club. And he thought, oh, I've got me a bum. I'm going to get this guy. And this thing proceeded to pick him up and toss him headfirst into the dumpster. And so
he tossed the policeman?
Tossed the policeman into the dumpster. So
wow, that's intense.
Yeah. That officer, I'm sure, had to live with it. Yeah. And you know, everybody says, oh, it was kids with speakers in the woods, you know, boombox playing a recorder. They've said that, you know, it was somebody in a suit. Well, if it was somebody in a suit that I saw, they were incredibly agile. And it was great effects to have on a couple kids playing in the woods. So
makes me wonder where LeBron James was during that period of time.
So yeah.
It jumped over a chain link fence. Like you saw it do it?
No, it grabbed the top strand of the barbed wire. And I don't know if it flipped or pulled or somehow, but it got over it. I know this is a podcast. I can't see me talk with my hands. But it flipped itself over the barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
Which was on top of the brick colonial style fencing at the time. So it was off of the ground.
12 feet.
Pretty tall, yeah. Yeah, whatever it was pretty tall and pretty nimble. That's what got us into it, what got me into it. And you know, I, as a kid, they always told you, stay out of the woods, something's going to get you. Yeah, we didn't believe it, but they were right.
It was Booger Joe around here that get you.
You get the
so
Alabama
how
over there.
Yeah, we call Alabama white sauce. Get it with barbecue chicken.
Oh! I was thinking you were talking about the moonshine. I got that in Tennessee.
No, yeah. How what's the word? Grown up, developed, urbanized is the area you were talking about? I'm asking this selfishly.
No, at the time it wasn't nowhere near like it is today. I mean, there was still. I mean, you got to figure the Mount Vernon Mansion, which is home of George Washington.
Yeah,
240-ish acres alone. There's a military base right there that's pretty large, Fort Belvoir.
Belvoir.
And then there's a.
I'm on the phone with him every day. I'm not even lying.
With Fort Belvoir, really?
The organization that I'm affiliated with has a annex at Fort Belvoir, so we're always on the phone with them. But the reason I ask is, I work on a military base here in Huntsville.
Okay.
Redstone, and if you look on BFRO, the only sighting in North Alabama is literally right outside the Space and Rocket Center, which is attached to Redstone.
Interesting.
So when you said military base, urbanized, I was like, wait just a damn minute. I was just associating in my brain, like, so it would be possible for something halfway, suburban to see something like that.
Yeah. I mean, the Potomac River also has the watershed areas maintained by the national parks and stuff too. So there's quite a bit of forestry through there.
Yeah, Redstone, that area right there is like in the middle of the city, but it's also a giant military base full of wildlife preserves. So to me, it's not that far fetched.
No.
Other than the mystery monkey.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, think about this. Even, what was it, 2-3 years ago, maybe, if that, in downtown in New York City, they discovered 2 or 3 different types of animals that didn't know lived in North America. I mean, granted, I think one of them was a salamander and the other one might have been a frog or something. But still, when you think about the bigger picture, something that we don't know exists in one of the most populated areas of our country, it's kind of odd.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy, which I guess wild trees would probably think it's not as crazy considering how secluded salamanders can get.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I heard another up close Bigfoot encounter of it was a child as well. It happened in the 70s in Ohio, and it was a very residential area. It was like an industrial area, almost no woods, but it was very close to a waterway, a creek or something. And so I think, well, I know for certain that in biology, uh, rivers, creeks, and streams, and just bodies of water, they act as corridors, they act as highways for wildlife. So whenever you have any kind of system that's a river and it's long, if it passes through a urban area or even a city, I could potentially see wildlife getting there, starting off, hundreds or thousands of miles away, and somehow just following that river or creek all the way to the city.
And we do have
I
that
think that's
that documented
go ahead.
case of the Minnesota Bigfoots following the river.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
Potomac River starts way up in West Virginia and runs all the way down into the bay, Chesapeake Bay, which feeds into the ocean. So
There you go.
and it would encounter also along that track the Appalachian Trail. I mean, not the trail, but the mountains.
Right.
So, and that I think has been proven by some to be pretty much a corridor for animals traveling. So,
Mhm.
That makes
and
sense.
somebody told me at one point in time that this is not my thinking. I don't know that it's true or is not true, but if there were packs, I'll use that word loosely, or families of them,
Mhm.
that some maybe a young male or female, in order to get outside of the tribe or pack, whatever you call it, would travel a great distance to go to another family, another area. And I mean, that kind of makes sense to me in a way also, that if it was a young, just say Sasquatch, maybe it was looking to Pennsylvania. Or maybe it was coming from Pennsylvania. I'm throwing it out there. I'm kind of being silly about it because none of us really know, but it
No, I
doesn't.
mean it makes sense if you're looking at it just as an animal, which it's hard to do sometimes with Bigfoot, to look at it as just simply an animal. But if we do, or if it has characteristics that are simply just animalistic, then yeah, what you're saying is correct. I mean, if there was a large primate species that lived in groups in North America or the world, really the world, but let's say North America, then it does make sense that when an adult male would come of a certain age, it would be beneficial for it to go away, start its own group, and because this would reduce inbreeding, it would get new genetics into it. So that idea does match up. I'm curious to look at what lions do. I wonder if lions do the same thing. Uh, if a male lion is born, a male cub, what does that male do? How far away does he travel? Because that would be a good indication. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it makes sense on paper.
Yeah, I agree.
We do know they have babies, so they have to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what is your what is your thoughts on the idea that Bigfoot is not just an animal? Because it's been said that it could turn into like a orb of light. It's been said it could go through a portal. It could instantaneously turn invisible. It could travel distances that it shouldn't be able to travel. All these weird things. What is your thoughts on these things? Do you think it could still be just a biological animal and have all
Well,
these?
I do believe that it's flesh and blood of some kind. I don't know if it's our type of flesh and blood, but I believe that it is. Now, I don't know that what's the correct word here? I don't want to call them supernatural, but I do believe that they have gifts we do not. And perhaps like people when they say they disappear, because I know in the North Georgia mountains we followed a track, stopped. We just stopped.
Right.
And there's not really a great explanation for that, because if you have even if you're tracking a deer, a bear, whatever, it's still, you should see it go away. So I've seen that. I don't know that I believe that they are picked up by ET or anything like that, but I do believe they have some special gift, or there is some type of technology that is being utilized with them, whether it's us being our government or something else, that is also involved with. I sometimes wonder if they weren't here before us and we're the aliens. I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah, everything points to them being the natives.
Yeah. Well, your answer is really great, and it gave me a lot to think about, so I could bounce off a lot of the things you said. Well, one thing you said, you were looking for a term, you were thinking about, what other abilities, what do we call them, gifts? Well, I think if you want to look at it as an animal, you could just call them adaptations, like cheetah has the adaptation to be the fastest running, animal on the planet. And, dogs have the adaptation of having extreme smelling ability, hearing ability, vision. So some of these things that Bigfoot or Sasquatch have, they could be attributed, or some of them could just be, biological adaptations that the animal has. And I talked to Bobby about this, and it's like, okay, to me, the meaning of life, every animal other than humans are a little bit different because we have free will. Humans are different, but every other animal other than humans, it seems like the meaning of life is, the animals always trying to do that, whatever they're doing, whether they're sniffing another dog's ass, or they're hiding, or they're hunting, or they're digging a hole. The reason why they do all that is really just so they could have healthy children. And so that's a term in biology called fitness. So fitness is a number, and it's the number of healthy children an animal has. But those children have to be able to produce children as well for it to count. So they have to be fertile. So going back to Bigfoot, I mean, if Bigfoot had, as an adaptation, if it had the adaptation to go invisible, to go through a portal, to communicate telepathically, all these things, if they were adaptations, in my mind, they all would increase the animal's fitness. Those are all things, all those abilities are things that would help them have more children. It would help them survive longer and live better lives. And another thought that I just had that I've never had before, I had it while you were talking and describing your answer, is what about this? Like, okay, this is really out there, but I have no evidence, so I'm just spitballing, and it just came to me. But I was thinking, what if people always say that the ETs are, they wouldn't share their technology with us, the flying saucer technology, because we're too irresponsible, we're too aggressive. If we knew how to produce the energy in a UFO, we would use it as a weapon. Okay. And that makes sense. Yeah, that's true. I think all that's true. We would do that. And I don't think we are responsible right now. But what if these Bigfoot type creatures, they have been on the planet longer than humans? And what if they are responsible enough? What if they can use the technology responsibly? And so what if the ETs gave it to them? They're like, they saw them and they're like, look, our goals align together. You don't want to destroy the planet. You want to live in harmony with nature. We see that you're intelligent. You don't have all these warlike tendencies. So what if the ETs were like, maybe that's where they got we're going to share the knowledge of fire with you. In this case, it's extreme technology because we want you to stick around. That's just a thought I had. I know it's out there, but everything's out there at this point, I guess.
On the table, that actually makes some sense, because if you think about military technology, most of the stuff they have is far ahead of what we know as civilians. So
yes,
if they had something, wouldn't it be even further ahead? So yeah, that I can agree to that.
Imagine if the military got a hold of the technology that the Greys and the Bigfoot used to do their transporting.
Right.
I kind of think they at least have a proof of concept of it already because of what I call the 50 years principle. Like everybody says that what the military has is 50 years beyond what we can think of. I've heard that from several different people.
I had a friend who was in Desert Storm, I think was the first one when we were in the sandbox. And he came back and he was a MP, and he was saying that they were processing the POWs or whatever prisoners on. He said we had these pads where we just type everybody's name, or just sometimes we just write it in. The computer would change it, and he described what now is an iPad to me, and that was then. So, yeah.
I wouldn't doubt there'd be some kind of parallel thinking with something like that, because that was touchscreen was around then.
It was. I don't know. I think we still had those old cell phones that were.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying like as far as the technology being conceptually something that could happen, it was available. And we had. I'm trying not to mention Jurassic Park every time we have a podcast, but they had the touch screens on Jurassic Park, and that was 94 or that was 93, and so it was but for the military to have it in 92. As far even as compressed as an iPad, it's not that far advanced. Not that far fetched. It's far advanced.
Isn't the story that the space shuttle was launched with less technology than we have in our smartphones? Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I've heard that for years. But...
especially the moon landing.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That was a microwave oven.
That's right.
That thing.
And we can't get back. Isn't that hot? We can't get back.
Why wouldn't we get back?
That scares the hell out of me, because they had the capsules here in Huntsville to look at, and I'm like, there's nothing in there but a shit ton of buttons. Like, how do you not get that wrong?
Yeah.
I have a question for both of you, actually. It's a little bit unrelated, kind of related. We're talking about the military and stuff. Okay, so here's the question. Let me set it up. There's this big push for space colonization. Okay, so Robert Bigelow, this contractor, he's making these inflatable structures that can be put in the lava tubes of Mars. So Mars used to be volcanic. And so underneath the ground, there's all these hollow tubes. And so people are like, let's make these inflatable habitats for people to live in these hollow tubes of Mars, right? So I get the idea. Okay, we all want to go live in space. It's free real estate. But then I think about, this is where the question is. Why is everybody going to Mars when, to me, feasibly, it sounds much easier, and you have the same concept, to live in the deep ocean? Like, why don't they, instead of making the tubes for Mars for people to live, they make the tubes for underwater in the deep ocean where nobody's at? Because to me, the ocean, first of all, it's faster to get there than Mars. It's less dangerous to get there than Mars. It's the same atmosphere. There's plenty. I mean, to me, it seems like the ocean would be a better place to explore. But what is the push, do you think? Why is there a push to go to Mars and not to the bottom of the ocean? Is there a financial reason why they're doing it? I just wonder.
Yeah, like Neil deGrasse Tyson said, whatever effort it would take to make not transpermia, but to make the Mars with an atmosphere. What is that term?
Right.
It's not panspermia. Yeah, that's whatever it would take to make Mars inhabitable with us out having to wear masks. It would have to be far more difficult than making Earth. Fixing whatever's wrong with Earth. So I'm not really sure. Other than it being, I'm not gonna say easier, other than it being more sustainable in the long run. That's a weird. I don't even know what I'm talking about here, but it seems like it's something that you could see that you conquered Mars. Mm-hmm. And there's aliens, and there's aliens living under the ocean. So that's too.
Well, there could be, yeah. And that might have been the key word you said there. Conquered. We conquered something. We as they call it a race. The space race to who can get to the moon first. The Americans wanted to be there first. So maybe it's the same type theory. So, oh well, that's in our backyard. Why would we want to do that? So maybe it's that type of thought. But I mean, heck, they can build tunnels and bridges under the ocean that are, I don't know the depths, but pretty dang deep. I don't see why we couldn't do the same thing. I agree. Mm-hmm. And it, to me, would make sense. I mean, aside from maybe sunlight, piping in sunlight and having people that were, I don't know, cave dwellers, but
yeah, I mean, everything I want to say is that it would be less dangerous to go to Mars, but that doesn't make any sense because one mess up on Mars, your hose under the ocean, you can just hit a ripcord and you might get the bends, but you can get out of there.
Right. And And I feel like there's potential for energy generation on the ocean because we have the waves. So I feel like you could build this giant vertical deep in the ocean, international waters, nobody owns it. You could make this huge facility for people to live in or work in, or you could grow food. And somehow you could probably harness all the wave energy around
You're
you
probably
too.
answering your
Because
own
that's what you
question
need.
with that.
Yeah. Wasn't
Because,
Antarctica the international science where basically everybody goes and studies up there? There's nobody owns it. Isn't that what the theory on that is?
the
So
Yeah.
International Space Station.
no,
No,
Antarctica. Yeah,
Oh, it's Antarctica.
it's
Oh,
a
okay.
area free that I don't think anyone claims that they own
Oh,
Antarctica.
right,
That it's all
right.
basically a research thing. So, and
Bet
Lord
money
knows
the
there's
Russians think it's theirs. It is
Probably.
ours, comrade. It is white. We are white people. Bet money.
But there's another there's another term I wanted to talk about, a scientific term. So, because we're talking about going to Mars, leaving the Earth. Well, a lot of people say let's just stay here and fix the planet that we have, right? But here's the thing: is that there's this term in biology called the R value. So it's just a letter R equals. Okay, the R value is assigned to an environment. Let's just, for example, let's say a small environment like a pond. Okay, so you have one specific pond. Well, it has an R value, and so let's say the R value represents how many organisms can that pond support before it just can't support anymore. And it is a numerical value, and it makes sense if you think about it. I mean, you have a pond, you have, it's a small pond, but you have 10 frogs. You're like, yeah, that sounds fine. These frogs should do fine. Okay, then you have 10,000 frogs, and it's like, yeah, this is way too many frogs. The pond can't sustain that. So what I'm saying is that all these environments have an R value. Our R value does exist, and the planet has an R value as well. So on the planet, there is a value of organisms that the planet can sustain, specifically humans as well. So it is true at some point we will run into that R value. But I wonder if, that R value can be adjusted, because I mean, I could see how if we redesign our cities to like be more vertical, we do everything vertical farming, and we drastically change a bunch of practices on the planet, we could probably make that R value higher, because there'll be more people living on the planet, but we'll be living so much differently that that number can be sustained. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that R value number because, like I said, Earth does have it, but I feel like before we go off to another planet or the moon to get some more R value, I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of things we could do on this planet to increase the R value. But how you guys are saying, you guys are saying that there's not really, the real prestige, the bragging rights, I guess that's all it is with conquering another planet. That's where the headlines are, not from
Yeah.
making this planet better.
I think it probably just sounds better on the news to say we're going to Mars instead of we're going to the ocean. Unless, like you were saying, there is wave energy, and anytime that there's a new form of energy, just look for that, whatever that is, to be squished. I mean, the Apollo program had uncovered a new form of energy, and look what Nixon did to it. Like, he killed it. I don't know how that's not.
Really.
I don't know how that helium-3 thing is not a bigger topic, because they killed it. They basically killed it because of it. And Chinese are going back, and everybody's shocked.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, your R value probably has a negative number in there for war. I guess you could figure out that that's the way that that we're kept under population control. But yeah, and the energy, you're exactly right. If you've ever noticed, almost any time they come up with, well, we could do this, we could do that. Well, it's not as efficient as. I think the next thing they're going to start saying is, well, the electrical isn't as, the cars and everything. That's not what we thought it was. And they're going to go back, and there'll be something, we're going to go backwards again, back to fossil fuels. And then they'll be like, oh, well, we got to try something else.
I think we'll probably hit something like hydrogen before we hit full electric. That seems to be what Toyota's trying to do.
I don't think full electric is going to.
Not yet. I mean, especially if you could get something like hydrogen that just makes water.
Yeah. That
maybe charges an electric motor that goes. Maybe you can make something that's a combination that goes for 10,000 miles off, Mr. Fusion.
I used to joke with my NASCAR buddies, if we wanted to get the electric car, to go 500 miles, at 100 miles an hour. We should have told NASCAR 20 years ago, hey, look, rednecks, go figure out how you can run that thing in a circle and fight and drink your moonshine. And by God, we'd all have electric cars right now.
Well, they're trying to make one a year. They're trying to do one race a year electric.
Yeah.
So look for that to be advanced upon pretty soon. They're like NASA, like all their stuff byproduct.
Yeah, it's funny that sport started out as a joke. I mean, not really a joke, but as far as technology goes, and now the people that are running it are literally rocket science. People that are designing it. How'd that happen? Had to be the show.
Jean-Jacques Leroy on Ricky Bobby. His crew chief was an astrophysicist from France, from Austria.
You guys seem to know more about engines than I do. So let me know if what I'm saying is correct. I have a question, but it's also the things that in the question might be wrong as well. So you might have to correct me. But is it true that the combustion engine we have today, like brand new cars coming off the lot, 2020 models, is it true that those combustion engines, the technology, combustion engines came out? Has there been that much advancement in all that time in the technology, or is it basically still the same?
I know that the pistons and stuff are about the same.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as my understanding. I think the difference is how the fuel is burnt cleaner now. I think it's the biggest improvement that we've seen. And even if you look at the government ratings, there's more than one different rating on how they figure how clean they are. So this administration changed the way that they were rated to what was back into, I think, the Carter era or something, whereas it had been changed to as a scientific number as to what it is now to reflect different things. I think it's just got to do with more with the burning of the fuel.
I know the injection system's a lot different than it used to be, from carburetors to throttle bodies to fuel injectors. Because carburetors used to come on, just put it right on top of the fuel injector, spray it right into the piston.
Yeah.
Carburetors just dump it on in. Which
grandpa.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so is it strange that it hasn't advanced enough, or do you think it advanced the normal amount it should have advanced in 120 years, or do you think it's been staggered or slow? The advancement of that.
That segues into what I was going to say. My grandpa used to race back in the 50s, and they were V8s and Lincolns and what have you, things as big as a house with 2 bench seats and no seat belts. And he said back then you could mess around and engineer something just in a garage to get 25 to 30 miles an hour in the 50s. He goes, and he doesn't understand why here we are sitting here 50 years later and they're still getting 25 to 30 miles, and the same size engine is still getting, like my truck gets 15 miles per gallon. Like you can't tell me that somebody sitting over there can't make it get 30 to 40, if not more.
No,
right.
My son-in-law, his dad or his grandfather is a engineer for Dodge, and he said we've had the technology for years for these vehicles to drive themselves. The government won't let us use it. He said the government is not prepared for us to use it. He said, but we've had the technology. He's retiring. He said, I've had it most of my career. He said the vehicles could drive themselves. So
yeah, that's not as shocking as the fact that it gets such horrible mileage still.
True. But once again, it's the technology. I think that getting back to your point there, that they can go further. They're smaller, and they burn hotter and cleaner now. So there have been improvements, but I do believe that there could be more. Yes.
I think
right. Yeah, and I think
100 ought to be the least.
I think what you were saying, Glenn, too, with the story about the self-driving is just the indication that the government, there's a lot of things they're holding back just because, well, it sounds like they're just not prepared, or they don't want to deal with the paperwork, the new laws, the new fines, the new world, basically, the paradigm shift of everybody using self-driving cars. They just don't want to do it for whatever reason. Probably laziness, if I had to guess.
Can you imagine
Probably lazy.
the litigation
Yeah.
that's going to go and remember what happened when the internet came along for publishing?
Hmm.
It's going to be like a million times that. Like, can you say this on the internet? It's not owned by international law. It's over here, Article 50 in the Magna Carta. Like, no, but this was written in China, and each rabbit hole opens up another one.
I thought, didn't Gore invent the internet?
I think so. Invented in Tennessee, another win. Claim it.
Hey, there you go. I didn't think of that.
Oh, my internet's cutting out. What happened? Hello?
You're just hearing whistles and looking for flags. I'm clear.
I got one bullet. Just yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking of iRobot. You're experiencing an automobile accident. The hell I am. When I think of self-driving cars, like that's just the first thing I think of. Which what were that movie? They were going 160, 100, 200 miles an hour.
Remember in the 80s, they were telling us we were going to have flying cars. Can you imagine the chaos that would cause? Drones now are wreaking havoc. Can you imagine what a flying car would do?
Yeah, I think that's dead on arrival. I think we'll have teleporters before we have flying cars.
Well, that circles us. That's a callback. Circle back to Jen Psaki over here. Circle back to our Bigfoot technology. What did I describe it as? Being like the landscape of whatever dimension that is has those portals in it, and they're just like a deer. They can run through it like a deer runs through a creek. Imagine if the government has that already and they can teleport.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's there, it's there. They know about it.
The experiences I've heard with portals, they're usually for some reason near high granite, high quartz areas. Now, I'm not a very smart person as far as that type of thing goes, but it seems that's an odd similarity to, they would say, well, these are areas where there are known using my quotation marks, and it's in that area. So
apparently limestone does it too.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard any eyewitness accounts describing how the portal looks?
Yes, I've actually worked with a crew that two people stumbled into a portal.
Really? What did they say it looked like?
Oh. It was black. It was void of sound. It was dull. It was cold, and
imagine
they could barely breathe. The two people that stumbled into it during an expedition, one of them is now passed away, and the other one has severe cancer.
So scratch portals off.
Yeah, I don't want to stumble into a portal.
The gentleman we talked to that witnessed the portal said it was, of course, it could be, we're all talking about like there's one portal, could be different kinds of portals. He's described it as a big doorway with northern lights coming out of it.
Not from what I've seen, but it basically just materialized. It was like it just came out of nowhere. It was in your home state.
He definitely said it did materialize though. Said it just opened up.
Yeah, opened up, and it appeared on a thermal imager as a dead cold spot in the middle of the field.
Now that happened on Skinwalker. They had that.
I don't know. I don't know about that personally. I do know about what we experienced. So.
They had that rabbi doing the portal opening prayer, and the woods went from being regular 75.
Right. I remember that now.
It turned just cold. It looked like it was looking at a glacier.
That's
everything
right.
went red and then blue. Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, I do remember that now that you said that. Yes.
I've been home alone for the last 10 nights because my family's been house sitting. And so I've watched that same season of Skinwalker like 4 times for no reason. I don't know why I don't go to season 1 because it's stupid. And season 3 is I'm still gonna let it finish, but so I start in the middle of season 2, right when that happens, and the rabbi is doing that.
Yeah, if you get a chance, pick up Trey Hudson's book, The Meadow Project. It's about an area we've researched and had that happen.
Trey Hudson.
I have I have another idea too that I think about the military. Really, probably all militaries, but I will say the United States military. And Bobby, I mean, you're affiliated with some of these military branches somehow, so maybe you could correct me or put me in my place. But just looking back at how the government has handled different things, like the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, a part of me thinks that the military is pretty incompetent. I think
Me too.
I'm not really proud. Yeah,
I
so I'm
grew up
like,
around a
do
military base. I agree.
do they really have this much technology? Are they really even using it? Can they actually figure out? It just seems like a lot of times they're kind of incompetent the way they handle. There's too much ego, or they're just not a well-run organization. So sometimes I'm like, I don't know if the military knows that much about
You
high
know, in the
technology.
movies, in action movies, when there's a natural disaster or some kind of attack, how the powers that be always do what you wouldn't think they would do, like get everybody out. But you're going to kill every one of them. I don't care. That's the military. But I'll say this: in the upper echelons, in the offices that aren't just controlled by the mass orders, there are smart people making good decisions. There's there's PhDs and there's people that are actually care. Like, but as far as like that level where they bring in the Connexes on the helicopter and take over a whole area and put down tents and to bring in ET on a gurney, that's the scary part, because that's the shock and awe kind of part of the military. But there is incompetent decisions being made, but I think
as I understand it, they when you enter into the military, if you come in as a grunt fresh out of high school, you're watched, and then if you meet certain criteria, you're moved to certain places, and then from there you grow. And I feel pretty sure that your competence level is gauged in that too. And then if you become a politician, you lose all your brain cells. So.
From what I've seen, the smartest people in the military, they're not the people in the military, but the people that work for them.
Agreed.
And a lot of the times. Now there's
a lot of those were some of the elites or special forces before they left.
Yeah, a lot of the brass is really smart, but they are still kind of brute force, like let's get it done, let's never sleep, win at all costs kind of guys.
Yeah, conquer that planet.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason we're going to Mars, because it's there and we're not there yet, at least in this dimension. We're probably there in the other dimension.
We need to put a flag on it, by God.
I'm trying to phrase it in a better fashion that makes you think I don't hate the military, because I really don't.
I think we're just being realistic. I think we're just being realistic about the military. We're not glamorizing it. We just want to. I'm just saying real observations.
Yeah, I mean, you hit them. There's incompetence. There is a knife hand, make it work. We're here to get a job done. Don't matter if we got $3 and one bullet. We're going to conquer that country. I mean, the military has been the only employer I've ever had after college, and so it's. I've seen the ins and outs of at least my layer. I mean, who am I? I'm a contractor in IT. It's not exactly Area 51.
I grew up around it. I worked around them, and all of my family before me worked for the federal government. So
yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of waste.
I mean, it's like the post office. Sometimes they do really good and get that package there overnight. Other nights, it's in Guam. You know.
Yeah, I guess I will defend also the military, and I'm from the academic side of things. So universities are also, and academic institutions are sometimes also run incompetently. So I don't know if it's such a thing. I mean, it's not to pick on the military, the American military on its own. It's just when you have large organizations, it's a lot of them just are running competently. You know, they're just barely getting by day, making these terrible decisions. It's so rare to see a really well-run organization. I think that's why we idolize certain people in history, certain politicians, like I'm just throwing one out there, Teddy Roosevelt. He seemed like he got stuff done. He made the park system, the national park system. So I think there are some people in these organizations, including the military and the government, that are good, but I just wonder how rare they are. It sounds like they're pretty rare.
I think that if they had to put their mind to something like Area 51, like developing things, the people that develop, I think they're fairly confident, but I think the shrouding of what we need to know, what we don't, is probably kind of like a Vulcan needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Like
Yeah,
it's better
I
it's
could see
better
that.
for us not to know about the crazy stuff because of the hive mind of people that couldn't handle it.
Yeah, no, I could
The
see that for sure.
control factor of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't
But at the
control
same
somebody
time, at the same time, when somebody says something's military grade, I'm like, don't do that. That's going to be crap. See, Rick and Bubba run a ad every day about these air filters, and they're called VeraClean, I believe. And he goes, if they weren't a good product, would they be on our Navy ship? I'm like, yes, because they're cheap. I'm like, that is the worst selling point for people that know what you're talking about. Like, I don't want your product at all.
I work in emergency services, and I've told rookies as we're going 100 miles an hour down the road, I said, now remember, you're in the lowest bidding vehicle there is out there.
The other thing about the military that I was thinking, once again, just the United States military, I can't speak for other countries. I just have experience with this one.
Well, they're far superior.
Well, I really wonder. I think if the military knew what UFOs were and they knew for certain they could control it, they would disclose. I think if they knew, like I said, if they were confident, they're like, we know what this is, and we can control it. We can subdue the phenomenon, and we can control it. They would tell us because they would be proud of it. That's what I think. They wouldn't hide it. I think part of the reason they're hiding it is because like we don't understand, we don't know how to control it. We can't help you.
That's
I
a very good idea.
disagree there on the fact alone of the chaos that would ensue, because that would probably cause modern day Christianity to collapse, because there's nothing written about extraterrestrial in the good book. And I feel like if that were to get out, there would be chaos and pandemonium and the government couldn't control us. So
yeah,
I kind of go the other way on that one.
That's bad, because that wouldn't shake my faith at all. It might make it a little bit better.
Well, I mean, I'm not biblical by any means, but even in Ezekiel, they talked of flying flaming chariots in the sky. So, yeah.
The really interesting thing about religion, and let's say Christianity, I think Christianity actually mixes better with the paranormal than it does with science, because I mean, Christianity itself, a lot of religions, but Christianity specifically, I mean, Christianity is an extraterrestrial worshiping religion. I mean, they already believe in extraterrestrials, and the main one, God, is an extraterrestrial because he made Earth. So by definition, he's not
by
from
definition.
Earth. He's an extraterrestrial, and that would make Jesus a hybrid between an extraterrestrial and a human woman, which is what we talk about in UFO abduction. Anyway, so I feel like if they were proactive, the religions could make the extraterrestrial revelation work. Like I said, mainly because you're worshiping an extraterrestrial already. You believe in an extraterrestrial.
I've been thinking this my entire life.
I understand how. Go ahead, Bobby. Yeah.
As I said, I've been thinking that my entire life.
I heard the Catholics were doing a turnaround talking about evolution, and they said, well, looking back now, we don't know what, I think it's 7 days is to God. So is it possible that there could have been an evolution in 7 days?
I think so.
I heard that and that just kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, did I just hear Christianity say evolution?
Yeah. I was raised Catholic and I've always been on board with it. My very devout grandma always told me that a day back then wasn't the same as they are now. And I'm like, well, of course it wasn't.
Right. Yeah, I got to say, I'm impressed by the Catholic religion. They seem to be doing a lot of proactive things as far as paradigm shifts that are coming in the future. Like they seem to be very into, telescopes, studying extraterrestrial life. They own a telescope. They hire, scientists.
Galileo,
the Catholic religion. They're hiring astronomers. They also look into paranormal phenomenon like levitating, some of the things that the Catholic saints were reported to do. So I don't know a lot about Catholicism, but this one aspect, as far as the paranormal and paradigm shift, they do seem to be being proactive, which I really like the word proactive. I think proactive is what could save you a lot of problems. If you could prepare for a problem before it hits you, that's good. like disclosure, it's probably going to come at some point. There's probably going to be some point where it's just unavoidable that the extraterrestrials are real. So if we're not proactive, let's say the government, if the government's not proactive, then we're reactive. After it happens, then we're having to scramble to figure out, piece together what we're going to do. But proactive is saying, I know this is going to happen. Let's predict how people are going to act. Let's predict how we could have, mitigate the damage. And it sounds like the Catholic religion is being proactive about some paranormal topics.
Yeah, there's a lot of people angry at this new pope, which some of the stuff he says, I'm like, well, hell yeah, there's aliens. And I think a lot of what we suffer from as being anti-science came from the Middle Ages, because the church was used to control everyone. I think that's probably 75% of why they do the split down the middle between science and religion, when in reality, science probably explains it, or vice versa. They're each the same, different side of the same coin. Like, I have no problem with evolution being there. I mean, if you do any kind of experiment on what's the word, God's time, you hear it, people call it. It's just stuff progressing and things falling into place. So it's not a monkey, them pushing us from being an ape to a person. It's not an insult. I mean, that's how it worked. The chicken or the egg is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The chicken, because it became a chicken from a lizard, basically. As I ramble on.
Yep.
All I'm saying is they're the same side of the different side of the same coin. I don't like the contradiction. You can't believe in science if you're a Catholic, because I totally do.
Yeah, the evolution thing, to me, the way I explain it, because I know it's an issue for some people, a religious issue, but I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, evolution, to me, all it means is it's slow change over time. All it means is like, look, you don't look like your parents, right? You look different than your parents. You changed. And your parents look different than your grandparents, right? They changed. And I'm like, well, just add 30 million years to your family line. I mean, that's basically what's happening with human evolution, is that we just slowly change with these. We're not identical copies of our parents. And if you add 30 million years of humans having babies, then you're going to get different looking humans. And I don't think that's an outrageous idea.
It's not. I think the control factor probably came along and did a lot of shifting. It started by the Romans, like wrangled it in and streamlined it. So that's basically it's basically the Gestapo.
Well, they destroyed a lot of information in history that we had.
Yeah, I mean,
the Great Roman Empire.
Look, follow the money.
And it was for power.
Yeah, it's not a hard nut to crack once you realize where all the rules we now follow. Because I'm like, it's 2022. Why I'm like, what? Why am I doing some of this stuff? Like, I hear it at church. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that, because I've got ibuprofen and all kinds of other stuff, and I don't have to eat white meat POTUS, just to name a couple concepts. Like, I don't have to do that. Like, why don't Jews eat bacon? Well, back when that law was made, if you ate bacon, you would die of salmonella. Just the raging, screaming, flaming diarrhea. But now it's not that big a deal. We have salt.
Yeah.
We've conquered the Great East.
Exactly.
I think this show has solved all kinds.
I think very basic. Yeah.
Imagine if I could smoke weed legally. This would be 7 hours long of this shit. Damn you, government.
I was going to say that I think we're overdue for a paradigm shift or a revolution, a scientific revolution. Like, just like we had them with the the Renaissance. We had a big scientific revolution. I think we're past due for one. I've said that before, but like, yeah, we're due for a paradigm shift, the scientific revolution. It will basically be a net positive. It'll be better. There'll be some growing pains, of course. But I also talk about paradigm shifts like puberty, like humans go through puberty. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but it's temporary, and you have to go through puberty to become an adult. Otherwise, you'll always stay a child. And so paradigm shifts for society are the same. It's awkward, it's painful, it's embarrassing, but it's temporary, and we will evolve as a more mature civilization.
Hey, the singularity's coming, like it or not.
Yeah, somebody asked me recently, how long was the Wild Wild West era?
Mm,
And
good question.
I don't really still have a good solid answer for that. And their response was weeks. And I was like, no, it had to be longer. They said, no, the federal government came in, hired people, and changed it. And I had to stop and think and go back a little bit. But if you look at private security, it was born out of the Wild West. And then a lot of those agencies went and were federalized. And so that was a time that we look at in our history books as well. That was a certain period of time. Like you just said, there was a shift. Who made the shift?
Right. The government.
That was a lull.
Yeah.
I mean, and it took me, I really thought about that because I was like, I really thought in my head that it was a great long period of time, but
I thought it was like 100 years.
I don't think it was that long.
Oh, weeks. Jesus.
That's what I was told. And I'm guilty of not having totally researched it, but I did go and look into enough of it to where I was like, that does kind of make sense because you had Pinkerton.
That's what I was going to mention.
Wells
Pinkerton,
Fargo. There was another one. There were several of them out there. Those, I think, were the top two. And things started changing and they became part of the federal government.
Yep. And the Pony Express.
What was the time period again? I think you cut off, or my connection was bad. How long was the Wild West around?
They were saying it was just weeks. Now I think, I think they changed it within weeks, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Oh, okay.
They changed it within, not that the whole thing, but it wasn't that it was the great long period of time like I thought or was taught in school that it was. It was definitely, they saw that there had to be a change and the change was made. It was just,
I bet like officially it was weeks, but like, the concept of how it was kind of shoot first, ask questions later went on a while before they can get it wrinkled in. Because they were still
it's interesting.
cowboys until late 1800s.
It's interesting how the government can play a big role in changing things, because I mean, obviously, I'm not satisfied with our government in the United States right now. I think it's most of it's doing a bad job of representing what people, the citizens, want, the majority of people. And I know there's a lot of corruption in American politics as far as money and the lobby groups. Anyway, but it's funny because I was reading that in Europe, the people demonstrate their power over the government a lot more. Like there was some European country and they went on strike. Almost the whole country, the whole city went on strike. And they demanded some kind of change. And it was something reasonable. It was like, give us more vacation time, pay us more money or something. And they got what they wanted to, because there's power in numbers. But then I heard that kind of news happens a lot in Europe, but it's never broadcast in the United States, because the United States, they don't want us to know what's happening there because they don't want us to replicate the results. I guess what I'm saying is that people do have a lot of control over the government if they know about it and they know how to use it. But Americans seem to be under this spell where we're just kind of like zombies. We're just drones. We just take whatever they give us. That seems to be that's my assessment of the situation.
Oh yeah, they got us fighting with each other.
My grandfather was a merchant marine and gave me a shortwave radio.
They do have a fighting.
And he told me, he said, if you ever want to hear the real news, tune into shortwave radio. This is back in the 80s before the internet. You'll hear the real news outside of the United States. And I always thought, there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, it's 100% true.
We get a bunch of people dressed up real fancy in front of a camera and they all read the same thing.
Yeah.
They tell us
about the weather. They get it wrong half the time and still keep their jobs. I have yet to figure that out.
They always tell us about a cute cat or a skiing squirrel.
Right.
Skiing squirrel.
Yeah. If it bleeds, it leads.
Yes. Win with weather.
Dirty laundry. That was done Tinley.
Yep. Kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down.
That's right.
Kick them when they're up, kick them all around. Do.
I was a photographer for a small paper in East Tennessee right out of high school. And the editor, he says, you ever get an opportunity and you see something? While I was out taking pictures, he goes, stand on their throat. Get the picture. I don't care what you do at all costs. Like, Lord.
Tourist eaten by Gatlinburg bear.
Oh, now I will tell you that Knoxville, Tennessee, the gateway to the Smokies. I was a paramedic there in the 80s and 90s. There was no gang problems. There was no shootings. And here at EMS and fire, we're running 3 and 4 shootings a night, gangs-related violence. And the news is like, oh, and look, a bear came out of the woods today and dug a trash can. What? And we were told from up above by administration, do not. There is no gang. There is no violence problem in East Tennessee. We do not want to stop the tourism.
I've been up very late. I've been up very late in downtown Knoxville many times. There's some shenanigans going on.
Yes, there's a lot of shenanigans.
Of course, I've been up very late in downtown Tuscaloosa many times too, so it's shenanigans aplenty.
I've never been in Tuscaloosa, I don't think.
Well, I lived there for 4 years.
That's crazy.
Yep, that's why I'm missing teeth. married to my sister, and I'm an only child. How's that happen?
Whoa! When you go back to that whole Christianity, there was one man, one woman. There's a whole
Adam
lot
and
of
Steve.
people.
Yet another circle back Jen Psaki style to Alabama. Before, I know it's been a little while, so I don't want to keep you very late. But I want to hear about your experience with the Alabama White thing, as I've never heard of it, and I feel like this is my adult film name that somebody stole. So I just want to know. I want to know what it is and what happened, because you said you got zapped and smelled the nastiest thing in your life, and so I want to.
Well, no,
I want to hear that story.
No, that was a night in East Tennessee. That was the Alabama White thing. Sorry, I let you down on that one.
Outside a pancake house.
Waffle House. Get it straight. No, actually, the Alabama White thing, that wasn't where I was zapped. We were doing an expedition, like I said, Trey Hudson's book. I'm a whole chapter in it, chapter 13, at the Meadow Project. And you should have me back, and we'll talk about the Men in Black. That was a female in black experience that I had. So we had been on the campgrounds, and I, for a while, had not been feeling well. So I was always the base camp communications officer. It was my job to basically make sure everybody on the radio was alive and well, and they weren't sucked up in a portal. So that night, everybody except for me and one other person had gone to bed, and we were both about to hit the bunk, and we had been talking, and she went over and was doing her thing, and I went over where I was doing in my side of the camp, and I was just going to hit a tree before I go to sleep. I mean, to be honest. So I'm standing there, hitting the tree, and we're beside a river. The campsite is, and I start seeing like a fog come down the river, and then like, oh, it's cool. It's gonna be a foggy night by the water. But I wasn't paying particular attention as I'm looking across the river. I shouldn't say river. It wasn't very. I guess a creek. I don't know. It was you could cross it, but it wasn't like huge. I started seeing a shape form, and okay, at first I'm thinking, all right, this has got to be my imagination. There's, I'm not thinking that this is a creature. And this white bipedal creature with red eyes has formed in this fog and is standing across the creek staring at me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is really a bad time to have a Sasquatch experience. So I was like, all right, I don't want to lose eye contact with this thing. I want to know what it is, but at the same time, I want somebody else to see it. I didn't feel like it was in danger or anything. And it was just standing at the edge of the creek, on the other side of the creek, basically staring at me. And I was like, okay, well, I got to pinch off and call for somebody to help me out here. I want to, somebody else to see this. And as soon as I broke off eye contact, turned the other way and called out for my teammate, turn around, it was gone. Fog it all. And I said, "Is she scanned the area with?" She had a color camera, scan the area. And the next day we went over looking for footprints. But I talked to Trey Hudson, the leader of our group, and I was telling him the experience. I said it was probably just my imagination. I said because I never heard anything, I never saw anything. I said it was like this fog came. He said, was the fog there after you saw this? And I said, now that you mention it, no, it wasn't. And he said, well, have you ever heard of the Alabama white thing? And no, I hadn't. He said, you've just perfectly described an experience with the Alabama white thing. And so it was really odd. It was like I said, it was like this fog came down the stream and it materialized and was staring at our base camp. And when I went to tell somebody, hey, this crazy guy thinks he's seeing something while he's peeing, it's gone.
What county was this?
It was in the Talladega Forest. I don't know what county that is in Alabama.
Okay, well that also explains it. Or quite. I was just wondering, like, if it was in like Mobile or something. I'm like,
oh no, no, Mobile. It'd be a homeless person.
Yeah, Talladega Forest makes sense.
I have a question about the eyes, the red eyes. Because look, man, the red eye thing comes. Men in Black, UFO occupants, Bigfoot, Dogman. Everybody's got red eyes, so it seems to be a common. Now, so the red eyes, I want to know, were they giving off lights? Did they look like, like a red eye when someone takes a camera? If you take a picture of someone with a blue eye, sometimes they get that red eye thing. Does it look like that? Is it giving off light? And another option, is it reflective? Is it like a reflective red? Like when you shine a light on certain animals' eyes as well.
Sure.
Well, like a cat's eye. Those are my 3 questions about the eyes.
As far as the reflectivity, there would have been nothing around for it to reflect on. So,
okay.
So not like a deer.
Yeah, I didn't have a flashlight. I was only holding one tool.
They were glowing themselves.
They were glowing themselves. But they weren't like laser beams or anything like that. I don't want you to lead people to think that I saw something like lights projecting out of its eyes. No, what I saw had a glowing red eye. Now, a person in Tennessee whom I've become friends with, she claims to have habituated some Sasquatch on her property. So I'm hoping to either get her on one of my shows or get to go hang out up there with her and spend some time. She claims that they use the red eyes as a form of communication with each other. Kind of, I guess, like the Navy used to do with the lights on the ships.
Okay.
I had never heard that until she told me that, and I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. I mean,
hey, if you get her on your show, make sure you tell her about us too, because we got 2 or 3 people that do that exact same thing. It's been on ours.
Yeah, she was the first in Tennessee that I've met, so I'm hoping
we've got a Missouri and a Minnesota and an Alaska.
A little too cold for me.
Yeah.
Of course, it did just snow in Tennessee mountains this weekend, so it's already too cold for me up there. Well, personally, I want to go research mermaids down at the ocean. Mobile, Pensacola, probably Pensacola, not Mobile, but.
If you want to study mermaids, I heard there's this Italian island that's got mermaids in it. Recent mermaid sightings.
Really?
I believe it's like an inlet ocean or something. Yeah, I found out about it because I forget what it's called, but if you just go to YouTube, look up Joe Rogan and mermaid. Very recently, like it was this year or last year, he had a guest. I don't even remember who the guest was. It was a black guy. He was a musician or a writer or a scientist. I don't know, but he just randomly, he was a clip. He just talked about how he went to an island. It's like a vacation spot, and it was a big lagoon or like a water, some kind of water. And the locals told him, don't go out there at night because there's mermaids. And he's like, whatever, there's no mermaids. And then he just had a sighting. He saw it jump out of the water. He saw, the mermaid basically. And so I was like, wow, people are still seeing mermaids.
Hey, we landed in Greece when I was flying as a flight paramedic, and we'd flown over several little islands, and I do not know my geography very well. I want to say they called it Zeus Island or something like that. And the guys were telling us that island is the only, I'll just say rock, in whatever body of water that is right there, No animals are on it. There's not even rats, insects, anything on that. And I was like, but all the islands around it are green and nice. And they're like, no, that's I want to say he called it Zeus Island. He says there's monsters out there. We don't go out. The locals don't go out there. I'm like, wow. I think in every culture there's some type of cryptid that no one understands. So,
except for our modern one for some reason. We're just we're so low vibrational we can't see that stuff. I think that's it.
Well, yeah, the low vibration thing is interesting because another thing that I've come to understand after studying the paranormal is that a big key to the paranormal that it seems to bind all the paranormal, whether that's religious spirituality, whether that's UFOs, and everything in between. What the thing that seems to bind them all together is meditation. If you're able to practice meditation, you will be closer to these phenomenon and you might be able to control them. Now, that's so interesting to me because that is the one thing that modern American society is against: quiet meditation. Everything is loud, everything is constantly in your face, everything is like, quick TikTok videos. Everything about our modern society goes 100% against the meditation mentality, which is very interesting to me. Why how did it get that way? Is it on purpose, or it's just the way the things are? I don't know.
I don't think it was on purpose. I think it happened just kind of like a crackhead just keeps having to get its next hit. But the byproduct is our low vibration.
Yes.
And I don't do anything to make it better for myself, even though I hate it sometimes. I can't stand to sleep without noise.
Yeah, I know when I go to Tennessee and I'm up at the farmhouse in the mountains, it is way too quiet. And I mean, it is like, okay, I've got to have something on to make noise.
I'm just worried to death I'll hear something.
Well, if they're going to get you, they're going to get you either way. I think I've learned that already.
You just hear things. It's staying in people's houses that are old. Like, I can't turn the TV on. Like, what if I hear something talk?
Yeah. I don't know why that reminds me of this experiment I always wanted to try. So apparently, I mean, anybody can try this experiment. It's kind of funny, but this guy named Damian Gray, he used to be a host on the show I was on called Black Lotus Productions. But you can still watch the episodes if you go to Black Lotus Productions on YouTube. But anyway, he said this one time he was alone. It was quiet, randomly. And he just sneezed out of nowhere, right? He just a loud sneeze out of nowhere. And he heard an invisible voice like scream in shock next to him. So if I just put the pieces together, it sounds like he wasn't alone. Somebody was there, or somebody was able to perceive him. And him just randomly shouting or sneezing, it scared it. So my experiment is always like, at some random time, I just want to scream, just by myself, just as loud as I can to see if I get anybody.
As long as you don't pee on yourself, you're all right.
Well, Damien's really sensitive anyway. Damien had that alien abduction.
Here, I'll tell you a story about me. Like you said, I'm sure you want to wrap this up. A lot of you guys don't know. Actually, this will be the first time it's been talked about on the air. I was attacked while on duty by a pit bull.
Oh, wow.
And
that's intense.
Yeah, there's a lot of PTSD and stuff that goes with it, but that's another whole story. But at any rate, I remember vividly getting out the sound of the engine, putting it in park, jumping off the side of the engine, walking up to the scene. It was chaos. I knew what was going on. And I'm pretty trained to be switched on after having worked in the city for a while and taking a bunch of courses from the military and things. So I'm pretty switched on about what's going on around me and not getting tunnel vision. And as I'm approaching the scene, because it was chaos, there was a fight on the front porch and just a lot of stuff happening. A voice, clear and distinct in my head, said, "Don't get bit." Real slow, real calm, real quiet, very vocal. And I heard it and kind of paused, and I looked up on the front porch, and there was like these 2 or 3 yipping chihuahuas that were nipping at the heels amongst the melee going on up there. So I'm like, okay, data clear. I can punt the little sucker if I need to. Don't come at me on Twitter. I'm not an animal abuser. So yeah, so that was and so I proceeded another few steps, and this voice screamed so loud in my head that I literally like stopped and said, "Don't get bit." And once again, I'm like, "Data clear, I see it," and I was attacked at that point. And so something was there. I was too stupid to listen, apparently. So
that's intense. Very intense.
It was very intense. And then after the attack happened in slow motion, and it was nothing. If you ever get somebody, there was growling and barking. No, it doesn't happen. I was like the Wild Kingdom. They got the slow old fat one at the back of the pack. That was me. So, and she came up behind me silent and got. And the first bite, didn't even know I was bit. My body didn't even register it. And then as I was being attacked, it's funny, the second bite where she grabbed me, was pulling me down, was when I realized I was being attacked. There was enough time in my head to process, okay, do I poke her in the eyes like a shark? What do I do? You know what I'm thinking? I was trying to think in my head while this is all going on, so it's all in slow motion. But yeah, I will never know what that voice was. And they're probably every now and then I'm getting woke up in the middle of the night with a slap in the back of the head. Just them smacking me, going, "Should have listened to me, dumbass." So.
Did you do any have to stay in hospital or anything because of that?
I had 3 surgeries. I was in the hospital for a bit.
See, I don't want to downplay your experience. I think a dog bite, I don't think it's that serious, but those things are like little velociraptors. The pit bulls are.
She only got me like 3 times, and it wasn't really the bite; it was the tearing and pulling with her body.
Oh yeah. Just shaking.
Where she tore up, did the most damage was when she literally had my fingers in her mouth and jerked me and then shook. And that was where the worst damage was. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Yeah.
I'm still working through it. So.
Where was that at?
It was in South Atlanta.
Okay. Wow.
I have a similar story that has some similar elements to you, and it has a similar outcome, actually. So this happened to me when I was 10 years old, and I was outside, and I was about to go inside. I was a 10-year-old boy, and I was about to close the door, and I felt, here's my hand about to close the door. I felt an invisible hand grab my hand and try to stop me from closing it. It felt normal. It felt like a human hand. It had a lot of pressure. It wasn't painful. I don't remember it being too cold or too hot. But much like you, I ignored it. I was like, that's weird. Why is there an invisible hand trying to forcefully stop me from doing this? I closed the door anyway, and then it was an accident. I didn't know. It was like a freak accident. But my mom's finger was like in the door somehow, in the little space. And so, yeah, her finger got smashed. She had to go to the emergency room. It was a big traumatic ordeal. But it sounds similar. Like I was receiving a warning, a very clear warning, and I ignored it. And then somebody had to go to the hospital, basically. Yeah.
One of my friends,
you should lead with that in the conversation.
One of my friends, he told me, he said, in the military, you're always trained to listen to your gut. He said, I don't know that was your gut speaking to you. He goes, it was definitely something with intent. He said, you should have listened. Yeah. I was like, yeah.
I mean,
who knew?
There's a lot of interpretation that goes on in the spirit world like that. Like, why don't you say, it should have said, there's a pit bull in there, turn around. Yeah. Like, if you can talk to somebody, use 3 more words.
Yeah. Look behind you, dummy. Yeah.
Pit bull, get out. Don't get bit. Yeah. Like, was a fucking chihuahua right there. What do you, I won't, okay?
You're right. You're absolutely right. Not very clear. Not very, I mean, it could be clear. Game. It could be clear.
Yeah. Not that I blame it. Whatever it was. Not that I blame it. I should have listened, but
it could just be our own minds. It could be just an adaptation we have. Maybe our minds can, people have thought about this. I've read research papers about this, but it's humans and animals. Perhaps we have some capabilities of sensing the future. We can detect the future. It's been shown. So maybe that's just our own bodies, our own mind or our own whatever body, trying its best to warn ourselves about the future and failing.
It's my subconscious or something. Yeah. what's the cartoon where the baseball's coming and the kid yelling goose, goose, gets hit in the head with the ball and he goes, oh, I meant duck. So,
Nah.
oh! So yeah. Okay, was that
Holy
a dad
shit.
joke? God.
It was. And the ironic part is you look just like my uncle, so it's double time.
Well, I was on a podcast earlier and they said, oh, did you see the lady behind you? There's nobody behind me. I'm alone in the room.
I thought you knew she was there.
I just
tell
thought
me you
about
saw
something
something.
about. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just thought about something about this. What happened to you with the voice in your head and what happened to me, these warnings from the future. I was just thinking through it. I was like, okay, what if this is an adaptation of our own bodies to prevent us from doing something, right? Well, what's interesting is, okay, let's say it was successful. Let's say it was caused by us predicting the future. Well, if it was successful and you didn't get bitten by a dog, then would there be any information to get back to you? Would you even remember someone warning you, because it never would have happened, so nobody would have had to warn you. So what I'm saying, I know it's a little confusing because I'm talking time travel stuff, but what I'm saying is maybe we only remember the times that we don't listen, because that's what exists. Because we don't listen, there is something to go back and tell us. Maybe that happens a lot to us. We always get these warnings, but every time we listen to them and we don't do that thing we're not supposed to do, then it's like it never happened, because it's like kind of like it erases it from history, if that makes any sense.
Positive
You know what I
feedback.
mean? It's kind of like,
yeah.
That's what
I've wondered how many
you know,
times that's happened.
After I got bit, I heard something say, well, it's only going to hurt for a little while. Well, it lied about that, but it's only going to hurt for a little while.
So you had a follow-up? You had a follow-up voice? Was that another voice in your head?
Yeah, after I got bit, it was like, well, it's only going to hurt for a little while. I'm like, that doesn't do me any good now. My fingers are dangling, blood's running.
That's really fascinating. It's only going to hurt for a little while.
And they were wrong. So because it still hurts to this day. But
I've wondered how many times that time resets happened after something was prevented or changed back.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible.
Yeah. I've thought if I had listened to that voice, the things that would be different now in my life. I mean, obviously, I still would be on a fire truck, or I might now be an officer leading the fire crew into, so it had that 1 second in time had a chance to make a huge difference. So,
maybe it meant put your hands in the air. I don't. Maybe the attack was always supposed to happen, just be like.
The surgeon told me I was lucky it was the hand. If she had went for the back of the leg, it would have been, I could have probably not walked.
Shark attack.
Wow.
Oh,
rip a calf off.
I feel blessed that even though I went through the event and everything that happened, I feel blessed that it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Yes.
Does your finger still work and everything?
Yes and no. Like if I was to do a pull-up or something, this hand, I can't keep my hand wrapped around it. It will slide off. I don't have the grip. I don't have the dexterity and movement in the wrist or elbow that I used to.
But you can still write and everything?
Yeah, well, I'm right-handed, but yeah.
Not me not realizing a mirror image.
Well, the fire academy doesn't think that I can be a firefighter any longer because I couldn't pull myself out or somebody else out of a building or something because of the loss of the grip strength.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Medical retirement.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I don't think they figured out what I'm going to do, what they're doing.
How long ago was that?
8/31 of 2020.
2020 or 2012?
2020.
2020.
Oh, that just happened. Oh.
Yeah, it's still fresh in my mind, yeah.
Were you wearing a mask? You could have prevented it all.
Or my safety goggles. But had the goggles on, it would have never happened.
If you would have had on a blue fabric mask. Just goes to show you.
Can you characterize the voice? Did it have any feminine or masculine overtones? Did it sound human? Was it very sterile? Did it have any characteristics?
It sounded human, but to sound sex, no, I couldn't. And I've thought back about that so many times trying to figure out what, I mean, I've went to bed at night trying to figure out what it was. You know, I've had people from church say, well, an angel. I've heard others say that it was subconscious, that, you know, our body, our mind physically sees things that just doesn't give us the input on. And so I've heard all kinds of things as to what it could be. But no, I couldn't say. It didn't sound like my grandma or my Uncle Bob, or so. No, it wasn't a voice I recognized, but it wasn't a voice that frightened me at the same time. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, that's funny because people around UFOs report the same thing. You know, there was this one guy, once again, around Skinwalker Ranch, not at Skinwalker Ranch, but he was like in Vernal or one of these towns, and he was working at like a real estate bank, some kind of office building. He went outside with his client, who he was in the middle of having a meeting, and he saw a huge UFO just hanging out over the building. This was in Jeremy Corbell's movie, his documentary about Skinwalker Ranch. Anyway, he said he heard of this. He's not the only guy. Lots of people, men and women, have reported hearing a voice like this in their head. He just heard a voice in his head, and it said the voice was, you know, it communicated the same kind of way, kind of like not very detailed, but somewhat. So he heard in his head, the UFO said, "You should go inside. You're going to miss your family." And so he understood that message loud and clear, and he's just like, okay, let's go back inside. But it's the same thing. People around UFOs hear these messages directly, and it's just like you know, straight and to the point, not always the clearest, but it's like no extra fancy words, just a voice, just telling you something. Yeah.
That's pretty direct.
Yeah. The threat to his family, basically. Yeah. Very, yeah.
That'd make me want to check security cameras after that. Like, what did it do?
Yeah, that's a good question.
If it controlled the time slip, we'll never know.
Yeah. I was talking to a lady last week. You may know her, Glen, Karen Pedrosa.
Yeah.
Know of her? You know, we had a lot of technical issues, but we still talked for an hour because I was like, I'm not letting this go, just for my own personal sanity. Talking about how the Mothman made her one of her friends sick because he ignored a warning not to go to Point Pleasant one day. Said I didn't go, but my friend went, ignored it, and was violently ill. She went up there one time. She got violently ill.
Wow.
I mean, that's not exactly like going to miss your family, but this is punishment.
We've had researchers going up into the woods, and one of them drove from like North Carolina to the North Georgia mountains, went to turn into the forest road that would have led back to the base camp where we were. He said something hit him like a wall. Said, "You turn around, you need to go home now. You don't want to be a part of this." He was like, "Okay, I'm out." And turned around and drove 2 hours back home. And then we also, that same trip, we had people that knew the area driving into the area. Once they got off the forest road, drove for over 2 hours and saw the exact same scenery and never got to base camp. They turned around and went back. They were like, okay, something's wrong. And they were like, no, wait a minute. We literally followed the GPS the same way. And they said it was the same. Of course, the woods is the woods, but these are people who've been out on those roads and things. And they were like, we were just driving, and it was things, and we could never get where we were going. They had to turn around and go back out of the woods, refuel, actually, and then come back. We're allowed into our base camp.
Very odd.
Seems to be a lot of that going around these days.
Yeah.
I was at base camp, and I don't
like
remember
the 10th
anything
story I've heard.
So.
Jesus Lord, what am I uncovering here? I want to stop doing this podcast. Every one of them's like before I started this back, I was going to create a paranormal podcast only, but then I realized I wanted to do a little bit of other things, of fitness and some stuff, some great outdoors, and I wanted to look for clues, and I've been doing that with this subtly, and there are clues showing up everywhere. It's freaking scaring me.
It makes you wonder, are we alone? And is there something with a bigger picture than us? And so, yeah.
I look at people who think we are alone and wonder what the hell's wrong with you. Like, how are you keeping that one in your sanity purview there? There's no way we're alone.
No. Mathematically, it's not possible. peaceful for us to be alone.
You know what's really funny is that reminds me. There's this channel I watch called Wisecrack on YouTube, and they're a bunch of philosophers. I mean, they're a bunch of young guys, the writers and the people, but they have degrees in philosophy, and it's interesting because they had a UFO skeptic on called Mick West. Mick West was on there, and he was talking about some military UFO videos, and he was talking about how they're not real extraterrestrials. And what was really interesting to me, the observation I made is how relieved and how happy and willing the philosophers were to accept what he was saying. Because I was thinking, how much distress would it cause a philosopher if it was true that there were aliens living among us, that aliens have been here, that abductions are real? I mean, that would blow a philosopher's mind. And to me, I got the impression through the screen that they were like so thankful for Mick West. They're like, thank you so much, Daddy Mick West, for telling us that there's no such thing as aliens, because that makes
No
our life a
such
lot
thing.
easier. There's no thing. This is all fake. And I just thought that was interesting. Yeah.
My dad would tell me that when I was little, and I'm like, quit saying that. That's no fun at all.
It all started with me. Go out in the woods. What happened?
We'll wrap up here in a second, but I'll just say we talked to a guy with, I guess he says there's Bigfoot on his property. I'm sure he's not lying. Not talking about Randy, but the other one. He was one of his points was that there were no poisonous snakes on his property, and he thinks the Bigfoot eats them during the winter. I'm not sure where he was drawing that conclusion, but what hit me in my mind was there were no poisonous snakes on the property I grew up on. But on the property next door, they were all over the place. And that freaked me out when he said that. I'm like, wait a minute. I've never seen one on our property, but all the other ones. It's the same amount of land.
You were probably being watched, when you were in the woods. All those little Bobby.
I didn't know there were timber rattlers in the South until I moved to Tennessee. So they're in Virginia. Oh yeah, I found that out on a woods fire.
We got like three species of them around here.
Yeah.
They're not even the ones I'm worried about. They're the ones that got the alarm.
We were going up the top of a ridge on a forest fire, and the guy to the right of me goes, I see the city boy there did all right with them pets. What's he talking about? He goes, you just stepped over that whole nest of timber rattlers. I'm wait, what? Get me out of here. There's rattlesnakes in Tennessee. That's it. I'm done.
That's the reason I own a Taurus Judge. Shotguns are illegal.
Yep.
The Judge has his bullets, and they're basically just stacks of coins.
That's it.
You just shoot and it just slings these stacks of flying saucers at him. And the box has a picture of a snake with his head coming off. I'm like, that's a selling point for me. I'll take a case. It's funny. It's just like a roll of nickels is what the bullet is.
Pretty
God
much,
bless
yeah.
America.
That's right. My God.
That's what I'm talking about. All right. We'll wrap it up. Glenn, you've been awesome. Now we've got a follow-up topic. Troy Hudson, Meadow Project.
Trey.
Yeah,
Hudson.
and I'd love to have you on too, Glenn, on my show. I have a
That's what I was
going to
say.
Wild Trees. Yeah.
So I was going to say Wild Trees needs to have you on as well because he asked better questions than me.
Well, you warned me there was a smart fella on the show.
Hey,
I thought you meant me, but obviously you didn't.
I've tried to pay him, but he won't take the money.
Well, thank
All right,
you.
fellas.
Thank you, Bobby, for that.
We'll see you tomorrow, Wild Trees, when we do our other show. And Glenn, thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. However, I'm sure you'll have me eventually. And
yeah. When we get the new show going, the Para, our normal guys show.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
Nice.
Sport cats, Para or normal. And we have a pact. If either of us end up on Rogan, you have to take the other one with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll both smoke our first joint there.
I will lose my clearance that day. I told my boss, I said, if I end up on Rogan by accident, I'm losing my clearance that day. So just know it's coming. All right, guys. Have a good night. And all
right.
Holler at everybody later. Thanks for being on.
Good night. Nice meeting you, Glenn.
You too, guys. Appreciate it. Had a good time.
See ya.